So good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending where you are in the country or in the world. So I'm just going to talk about the process of how someone would become the prime minister in Canada. If you have been me in the past few weeks, you've never cared more about Georgia in your life in the U.S. for the amount of votes coming into there. So just to give a little bit of context, in the United States, in the past election, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, they're elected through basically 50 separate small party elections that are held across the country. So they can be weird. Like in New Hampshire, they do something called canvassing, where you show up to a gym and people try to drag you over to the side to support. So places like that. So in the Democratic primary, there'd be people for Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, etc. Or they just do kind of a normal ballot election for who you want to be your party's nominees. And then each party nominates them, and then you get into the general election in the states. And to become president in the US, you actually need 270 electoral votes. And each state has a variety amount of electoral votes tied to them. So places like Georgia, Pennsylvania, Florida, all of that. So that's just kind of a little bit of context on the US system. And I'll dive into kind of how we select how someone would become prime minister in Canada. So really the first step is you want to become a party leader. So each major federal party holds leadership conventions. Usually this is after someone either resigns or they lose an election and are kind of forced out by the party. So for example, Justin Trudeau, before he became Prime Minister of Canada, won a leadership convention in 2013. And recently, Erin O'Toole and Annamine Paul both won leadership elections within their own parties. So each party does it slightly differently, but the Greens and NDP follow a preferential ballot system where it's just one member, one vote. So this would be, you would rank your candidates in choice from 1 to 4. And if your candidate is eliminated, then they would go to your second choice and work your way down the ballot until someone had a majority of the votes. So it's 50% plus 1. But the Liberals and Conservatives, they run their choice systems a little bit differently. So each riding is assigned 100 points. So that would mean there is 33,800 points for the leadership election. And based upon the votes share of each riding for a person, that's how the points get split up. And then as the ballots get ranked, they knock people off and shift the votes around. So Erin O'Toole, for example, he needed 16,901 points to win the Conservative Leadership Convention. That happened in August, and that took 4 rounds of ballots where the lowest scoring candidate was eliminated and then all of their votes redistributed. So that is your first little mini election you need to win. Ideally, you would already have a seat in the House of Commons as an MP, but if you are not, so now you need to go win a seat in the House of Commons to be an MP in Canada. You have to be 18 years old, a Canadian citizen, not ineligible under Section 65 of the Elections Act, and also successfully submit nomination papers. So that's just a lot of paperwork and signatures you get from people in your riding who are supporting your run to be that MP. In the past, prime ministers have also governed from the hallway because you can be appointed prime minister but not hold a seat in the House of Commons. That is very rare, and the last person to happen was John Turner back in 1984. But usually if the prime minister doesn't hold a seat, a rookie MP is kicked out of their seat that they hold, so the prime minister is able to run and win that riding. And then the third and most complicated one is you need to win an election. So just holding a seat and being the leader of a party doesn't necessarily guarantee that you will be prime minister. A lot of people also usually want your job during the election cycle. So currently in the House of Commons, 170 is the magic number if you want to hold a majority government. But you can also be a prime minister with a minority government, which usually means you hold the most amount of seats in the House of Commons, but not a majority of the seats in the House of Commons. So that's the current situation we are in right now in Canada. And if for some reason there where even closer is odds, the prime minister is able to be booted out without an election happening if someone else is able to demonstrate what's called confidence of the House. So, for example, Aaron O'Toole, if he was able to show that the government didn't have confidence in the House, the Governor General could either dissolve Parliament, and that's where we go have an election, or it could go, okay, Justin Trudeau, I don't think you're able to govern, but I'm going to go give someone else a chance to show that they have confidence of the House. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. Usually we just go to an election. So you've won your election, you've won your party leadership, you've won, you have a seat in the House, and you won a national federal election. Now you're prime minister. So we don't really have this concept of PM-elect. If you hear, there's a lot of back and forth in the US about president-elect. Once things are done, we get going pretty quickly. So usually the governor general will invite you to form government, and you go to Rideau Hall. They have a nice ceremony. You sign some papers, and then you can get to work as the Prime Minister of Canada. And yeah, that is my presentation. Thanks, everyone.